way, when someone else sees it from a different perspective. And then when you see it from that way, then maybe some of them are true. Yeah.
Well, and like I said last time, you can do the test and you can do a bunch of reading, which is helpful. But probably the most helpful thing is spending time, with good friends who really see you and know you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be able to point out some of those things. Like, how often do I say to people when they say they're a particular number, I'll say, "Oh, I don't really know if you're that number," and it's important that it happens in community. I think that makes the most sense when people can point that stuff out. Another question, when you've read about your own type, what are some things about your particular type that delight you? Something, that you read and you say, oh, this is what I love about this number. You're not going to sound prideful, by the way.
Well, sevens are supposed to be upbeat and see the glass as half full, and life is an adventure. And especially with tough times like this, I'm glad that most days I'm much more up than some of the other people that I know. But maybe I'm fooling myself, but I think that's a helpful thing.
Yeah, we need optimists. Can people hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sorry. Okay, good. My other headphones were not working properly. I think the number, like I'm a 1 as well, even though I don't seem like it. But that's, I think, over years of learning to know myself and growing spiritually. But the thing that I find that is good about it is that living for a higher purpose is really important, and doing what's right, and living out of that space of integrity. So what I like about being a 1.
Mm-hmm. Others?
My favorite thing about being an 8 is I am 150% committed to the people I love. I am as loyal to my people as the day is long. They are, if you're mine, you're mine. And I'll do anything for it.
Others?
Well, I like the fact for myself that being a 7, I'm not afraid to jump in. I'm not afraid to speak my mind or speak my piece or speak, and that has, I think, done me in good stead over the years. And I agree with Bernie. I love looking at the world, the glass half full kind of. And that's how I sort of have walked through many different situations. There's hope. There is light. There's life. Let's not dwell on let's go and look at the life. So I think I do appreciate that.
Hmm?
I was going to say earlier that I'm mad about the fact that I'm mad at everything. But on this side, I'm also glad that I get upset about things because it does give me energy. So I feel like it's both. Like, and even for the people that I know who are 2s, like love, like I feel like it's both and, right? Love is good, but too much love is also bad. We can't, like it's all of it's good and all of it's bad.
That's 2020.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get started on that.
Any others? One of the things that just, of course I know, but struck me this week as I was doing a fair bit of reading, is just how important. Oh, not just reading, but having a conversation with a good friend about this. Just the understanding that we are actually at our best when all of the numbers are somehow represented in a circle around us. For so many reasons. Like I know I said last time that like I'm drawn to other fours, but regardless of whether I'm drawn to them or not, like I need other numbers. Like if there were just a bunch of one particular number in our sphere, that's not helpful, right? I think that the Enneagram just reveals so many characteristics, and I think we have elements of all of the numbers inside of us in some capacity. Like it's a bit of a spectrum. However, I think that it's really important to realize how actually interconnected we all are and how dependent we are. If I didn't have, a particular number in my life, like if Steph, my wife, wasn't a 1, I can imagine I would not, I wouldn't be doing very well. There would be no calendar or schedule. I wouldn't make it to almost anything, and probably our bills would never get paid on time. So that, we really do need each other. Or sometimes as a 4, I can get pretty introverted, and without a 7 in my life, I wouldn't have ended up in Tijuana somehow on a youth ministry conference with Kyle Berg. I just wanted to spend the time in my room, but he somehow got us to Tijuana. So that's what happens, and we're all better for it usually, right? Like when we have other numbers that really help to ground us and it makes us better.
Yeah, but 7s are exhausting, Corey.
It's true.
It's true.
Yeah, I think I'm less of a 1 because I live with a 6 who's rubbed all the edges off. It's either that or I would have gone literally insane. So,
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about wings. This is often one of the most confusing things for people, when you talk about wings. And so first thing I want to say is that your wing, like I said last time, has to be right beside you. It can't be like a 1 with a 5 wing. That doesn't work. So you would be a 1 with a 9 wing or 1 with a 2 wing, and that's important for a number of reasons. I almost see the number as a bit of a close neighbor, or as an influence that doesn't necessarily change your core type at all. So if a core type is like ice cream in a bowl, the wing indicates the kind of sauce that you add to your ice cream. It's just the flavor. And so I think what's true is that we all have access to our particular wings at all times. So I think especially as you get older, sometimes what tends to happen is you flip wings, or you're able to access particular characteristics from both of your wings. And maybe when you're younger and a bit more immature, then one particular wing comes out a little bit stronger than the other. But over time, maybe there's a bit more of a healthier balance, or you're able to access the good or the health out of each wing. That's one of the things I've been thinking about. I think that the wing enables us to understand our particular types, not only in isolation, but in relationship to one another. since the Enneagram types are seen as a spectrum or a bit of a continuum, connecting to your wings can help you understand the subtleties of your core type. And I think that's what I was getting at, Kath, before. That's what the wing really does, is it helps to clarify some of those subtleties of our particular core type. And so by leaning into our wings to one side or the other, we expand our perspective and increase our emotional repertoire. The wings may also offer a way to understand the tension and influences on someone when they're a bit stuck, and it creates the potential to reframe whatever they're going through as maybe an opportunity rather than something that's seen as a negative. And so one of the things that I think confuses people when it comes to wings is you know, how someone could be a 3 with a 4 wing or a 4 with a 3 wing. Is that something that you've been thinking about, in something that you've, as you've been looking at some of the wings, maybe pondered, or you've been asking yourself the question, like Glenn, you said before, you're a 7, but maybe with a 6 wing. Have you ever thought, well, am I a 6 with a 7 wing? And does that change things for you? What do you think? Is that a confusion? Does that make sense?
Well, I actually have thought of that, and I do realize that my motivation is a 7 base. But I resonated with what you said. When you're younger, I tended to go to the negative side of an 8. I tended to be autocratic at times. And I realized later on that that was what was happening. Just interesting. I hadn't thought of that before.
As you've started to kind of explore the idea of wings somewhat, is that something that came pretty naturally? Or is, even though you might kind of understand your home base, your core type, that you can't really decide which way you might lean in terms of your wing? Or is that something that was pretty easy to see? And did it help to clarify some things for you?
It was 4 for me, for sure.
Say that again, Kath, sorry.
I said I would be a 3 with a 4 wing, I think for sure. If I'm looking, if 3 describes me best, I am more 4 than I would be 2, for sure. I think. Although there are some things that I'm not.
So, you know, isn't that interesting though? Like that you can look at someone. So if I'm a 4 with a 3 wing, and let's say Kath, you're a 3 with a 4 wing, you know, you kind of wonder what's the difference between the two? Yeah, which is we'll get to in a minute, but.
Although, Corey, I'm not moody, so I'm not sure if you are, but I'm not.
I think that all comes down to motivation then, right? Like if you're thinking about a 4 with a 3 wing or 3 with a 4 wing, it's about that primary motivation. That's what's really driving you and your choices, right? It isn't about how you're acting. It's about what is inside. And that's, I think, why, like for a while there, I was deciding if I was a 7 with an 8 wing or an 8 with a 7 wing. And I think I am an 8 with a 7 wing because of my motivation and my fear. Like, I think that primary fear is a big piece of it for me as well. That's how I felt I was more of an 8 than anything else.
And because I'm not overly confident in this, Val, is the motivator external?
No. It's all from inside, right? So that also to me takes lots of time to, like, It took a long time to work through that for myself as well. Talking with lots of people and figuring it out.
So how stuck are these things, Corey? So if I'm a 7, let's say, and you're thinking going with wings of 8 and a 6, couldn't there be a perfectionist part in that play in there somewhere? Or, you know what I'm just asking. How
You're a
much?
7?
Well, I'm just saying, could you take in something from, I know you're not supposed to go across, but, you know, could you also be have elements of 2? I mean, we're all, you know what I mean? So the wings is your primary influencer that's, you know, on either side of you, but going across the way, you could be artistic, a 4-ish kind of a person and still have the enthusiasm of a 7, right?
So
Yeah.
7?
So,
7?
hold. Oh,
Yeah, go Corey.
all good. So it depends a little bit. Well, again, like we have elements of all of those in us, but also it comes down. We'll talk about this in just a minute, to strength and growth points. And so, like as a 7, when you perhaps are a bit stressed, 7s tend to go to a 1 and become quite critical and very much into the perfection side of things, and often reveal a bit of a stress point. So yeah, it definitely can happen. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Or partly?
I got to keep reading.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about wings and stress and growth points. And I'm going to start with the number 8, because that's where the book starts, and it's just easier to go through that way rather than me flipping through. So 8s with a 7, which is Val, is what you have identified yourself as, pegged yourself as. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So this can be a bit of a wild combination. 8s with a 7 wing are outgoing, they're energetic, they're fun, they're ambitious, and sometimes a bit impulsive. These 8s live life to the fullest. They are the most energetic of all numbers, and also the most entrepreneurial. So, you know, if you see some of the most successful entrepreneurs around the world, there's a fairly good chance they're an 8 with a 7 wing. Now, if we flip that and we talk about 8 with a 9 wing instead, they have a bit more of a measured approach, I think, to life. They're a bit more approachable. They're actually a little bit more open to cooperation rather than competition. I think that's one of the big distinctives of an 8 with a 9 wing and an 8 with a 7 wing, is that there's just more cooperation involved versus a little bit more competition. They're very supportive, they're modest. And so what happens with an 8 when there's a stress point, they tend to associate or go to a place of being an unhealthy 5. And so 8s, if there's stress, they might tend to withdraw and become even a little bit less connected to their emotions. 8s might become, if they're stressed, a bit more secretive. They also might simply dig in their heels and become a little even more uncompromising than they probably usually are. However, when they're growing and they're in a place of security, they tend to move to a healthy side of a 2. And so 8s in this space don't insist that their beliefs and opinions are absolutely right, but learn to listen and value other people's points of view. The heart really seems to connect there when they're heading into a growth place. They become open-minded and even caring. And so for 8s, their primary motivations are to be self-reliant, they resist weakness, and they like to stay in control. And so as an 8, Val, would you say that that resonates? Some of that resonates?
Absolutely. I mean, in my summer of studying the Enneagram, I realized as I was studying it that I was actually in a really unhealthy place. And I was leaning into the unhealthy 5 world, where I was on my own and very removed from everyone, trying to make sense of everything that was going on all by myself and not understanding what else I could do. And so as I learned and saw that in myself, that I started to move towards a healthier version of me, and I started opening up and becoming more vulnerable, which is the biggest fear, that like you open up to people and then they know everything, and then that means they can turn on you. So that's like a big thing in my 8 world. Whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter. It's in my head. And so so as I've been learning about it, I've been trying really hard to build that vulnerability and open up, and slowly I'm moving towards my growth side, which is a 2, which is the best part of the 2, which is the loving and the helping and the caring for others. And so, yeah, it's amazing that like reading those 4 things, just, I really can resonate. It's been a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a 9. So a 9's primary motivation is to create harmony and to avoid conflict and tension. 9's with an, and so if you're a 9 with an 8 wing, this is one of the most complex combinations on the Enneagram. Given the 8's need to go against power and the 9's need to avoid conflict. I can only imagine what happens if you are a 9 with an 8 wing. What tends to happen though is that they're more energized, they're confident, they can be somewhat stubborn but outgoing, and they have a bit more access to their emotions, and they're not quite as threatened perhaps as a 9 with a 1 wing. I think that 9s with an 8 wing find it much easier to be clear and direct about things that are important to them. 9s with a 1 wing have a strong sense of the difference between right and wrong. I think that that's one of the biggest pieces for them. The 1 energy helps 9s to stay a little bit more focused so that they're able to accomplish more, which enhances their confidence. The 9s with a 1 wing are more critical, they're more orderly, they're more introverted and passive aggressive than other 9s. When they're stressed, 9s tend to act a bit like an unhealthy 6, so that they become somewhat overcommitted, they become worried and rigid, weary of others and anxious, even though they probably couldn't say why. But when they're coming from a place of growth or security, 9s are feeling comfortable and safe. They move to a positive side of a 3, where they're more goal-oriented, they're decisive, they're self-confident, and they're even in touch with their own life's purpose and agenda. If we go to, if we look at number 1, 1s with a 2 wing, 1s with a 2 wing are more extroverted, they're warm, they're helpful and empathetic. They can be more critical and controlling, however. 1s with a 2 wing tend to talk too much and try to accomplish too many tasks in one day. Unlike 2s, however, they don't feel a particular urge to meet other people's needs, which is the strong characteristic of a 2. But 1s with a 9 wing tend to be a little bit more introverted, a little bit more detached, and a little bit more relaxed even. Ones with a 9 wing are outwardly more calm, and they also kind of mull over their decisions for a long time. And this wing actually exacerbates rather than helps the one with procrastination. And that's one of the big characteristics of a 9. When 9s are stressed, when 1s are stressed, they tend to take on some of the unhealthy characteristics of a 4. So somehow their inner critic begins to work overtime, and their need to perfect the world kind of goes into overdrive. They are more sensitive to criticism and even can feel a fair bit of depression when they're stressed. But 1s, when they're in a growth place and move to security, they tend to take on the qualities of a healthy 7. So then they become accepting, spontaneous, even fun, open to trying new things, and being both and rather than either or. So sometimes, you can see that in 1s where for some reason they can be spontaneous and exciting. And so sometimes you would say, oh, that's a 7 characteristic, and that's actually what's happening. And they're in a place of security and growth. The primary motivation of a 1 is the need to be right, and to be somewhat beyond criticism, and to improve themselves and everything around them. They want, I think one of the words that sometimes people use for a 1 is the idea of reconciliation. Like they want everything to be reconciled, everything to be whole, everything to be right, and true. If we look at a 2, particularly a 2 with a 1 wing, they're concerned about doing things quite properly. They are very dependable and responsible. They're more critical of themselves, more controlling. They're aware of their emotional needs, but often have trouble expressing them if you're a 2 with a 1 wing. But if you're a 2 with a 3 wing, they're a little bit more ambitious, they're more image conscious, and even somewhat competitive. They're extroverted and sometimes even a bit seductive, like a 3 might be. They're more concerned about relationships and connections than 2s with a 1 wing. They're also a bit more confident. 2s, when they're under stress, they tend to behave a bit like an unhealthy 8. So they can become demanding and controlling, either directly or somewhat manipulatively. But when they're on a path to growth, 2s can move to the healthy side of a 4, where they're okay with not having to pretend that they love everybody. These 2s have some understanding of the need for self-care and can focus inwardly. That's, I think, one of the differences between 2 with a 1 wing and 2 with a 3 wing is that 2 with a 3 wing, often their ability to provide self-care is a little bit better than the 2 with a 1 wing. They're a little bit more not just in touch with other people's emotions, but with their own emotions as well. I think that's one of the defining characteristics. One of the primary motivations, of course, for a 2 is the need to be loved, the need to be needed, the need to be appreciated. If we go to a 3, 3s with a 4 wing, this is what we were talking about before, Kath. Because 3s can be chameleons somewhat, and 4s value authenticity, 3s with a 4 wing experience tremendous confusion and sometimes even some inner dissonance. At the same time, they want to project an image to please the crowd. The 4 wing is kind of pointing at them and screaming, you're a bit of a fraud. 3 with 4 wings are more introspective and in touch with their feelings, much more than a 3 with a 2 wing. They're sensitive, they're artistic, They're emotionally intense, and they work more carefully on crafting the right image. Threes with 4 wings aren't as driven to be stars as threes with a 2 wing, but they can be more pretentious. Threes with a 2 wing are much more charming and intimate. Threes with a 2 wing make great entertainers, politicians, salespeople, and pastors. When their lust for attention and recognition overtakes them, or when they feel underappreciated, however, they can become angry and somewhat hostile. More than a 3 with a 4 wing, threes with a 2 wing need to be a star. When they're stressed, they tend to take on the characteristics of an unhealthy 9. So they retreat to the couch with the remote, and they lose themselves in unproductive busy work. They lose their characteristic optimism and confidence, and even can become a bit self-doubtful. But when they're in a growth place, a healthy place, they tend to take on the positive side of a 6, where they become warmer and more in touch with their feelings and even the feelings of others. They become less competitive and defensive. They no longer need to be the star, but they actually care more about what's best for the group and want to connect to something that's bigger than they are. The primary motivation of a 3 is to be affirmed and to distinguish themselves from others. 4s with a 3 wing. 4s with a dominant 3 wing want to be the most unique and also the best. That's not true, by the way, but it says it is. Their energy is competitive, and they have enough of the 3's image consciousness that they're more aware than other 4s of the need to dial back their emotional intensity to be socially acceptable. First, they're going to be more outgoing, which translates to overly dramatic, and then usually more productive, hopefully, turning dreams and ideas into a reality. 4s with a 5 wing are likely more introverted and even more unconventional. They're very concerned with their own uniqueness. They're quietly different, quite often eccentric. They spend more time alone and find it easier to let their emotions be without having to talk about them or respond with some kind of action. When 4s are stressed, they tend to take on the unhealthy characteristics of a 2. So here they somewhat repress their own needs and become excessively dependent on others. They crave attention. They'll need a ton of affirmation and reassurance. And even there's some jealousy there. But when they're coming from a place of security and growth, they tend to take on the traits of a healthy 1, where they stop talking about their creative ideas and actually just become disciplined enough to buckle down and, realize them, get the job done. When they're secure, they can have feelings without talking about them or acting on those feelings. The primary motivation of a 4 is to express themselves, to create beauty, and to protect their image. 5s. Let's all look at Connie while I read this. If we look at 5 wings, 5s are wedged between the passionate, intense 4 on the one side and the loyal but anxious 6 on the other. So 5s with a 4 wing are more creative, they're more sensitive, empathetic, and even somewhat more self-absorbed than a 5 with a 6. They're independent and often eccentric. 5s with a 4 wing are not sure what to do with their feelings, but would rather process them alone than in a group setting. 5s with a 4 wing are also more likely to experience some depression or melancholy. 5 with a 6 wing, though, they're more anxious, they're more cautious, and incredibly skeptical. They're also more social and far more loyal than a 5 with a 4 wing. 5s with 6 wings live more in their minds and will question authority and the status quo. 5s with a 6 wing are also much more relational. When 5s are stressed, they tend to move to the not so healthy side of a 7, where they hoard and cling a little bit more tightly to things, which makes their world feel smaller and smaller. When this happens, they turn their attention away from the needs of others and focus almost solely on their own need for safety and security and independence. They can, in this place, they can also become somewhat frivolous and distracted. But when they are in a place of security, they tend to move towards the positive side of the 8, where they become more spontaneous, more physically present, more outspoken. Yeah. And the primary motivation there of a 5 is to possess knowledge and to defend external threats that go on around them. 6s. 6s with a 5 wing. These 6s are more introverted, they're more intellectual, they're cautious, they're self-controlled. 6 with a 5 wing simply like to protect their privacy, engage in solitary activities, pursue hobbies. The 6 with a 5 wing has a greater need for time alone, which can help them gain a broader perspective on things that sometimes contributes to their own anxiety. 6s with a 7, 6 with a 7 wing are, it says here, a delightful surprise. They're somewhat entertaining, they're animated, they're even adventuresome. They're willing to take a risk, although only a little, so that the boundaries of the 6 are stretched to just accommodate more options. But the 6 with a 7 wing doesn't completely separate from their anxiety. So there's always a backup plan in case an adventure becomes a misadventure. When 6s are stressed, they can move to the negative side of a 3, where they can become workaholics who pursue material success or hoard resources to make themselves feel a little bit more secure. They won't try anything that they don't think that they can do successfully. But when they're in a place of security or growth, they tend to move towards the positive side of a 9. 6s stop planning for disasters then and feel less anxious about life in general. And then they're more lighthearted, more flexible, empathetic, and energetic, and they're more accepting of others. 6s connected to the positive side of 9s can believe that in the end, everything is going to be all right. The core motivation of a 6 is security. It's reassurance, it's feeling supported. And last, number 7. 7 with a 6 wing. They're more settled than other 7s. They give both projects and people more time before moving on to the next thing. These 7s are sensitive, a bit more anxious, but they successfully use charm to disarm. They're dutiful, loyal to family and friends. 7s with an 8 wing are much more competitive. They're bold, they're aggressive. They're persuasive and assertive. They usually get their way, yet they're still incredibly playful. And having a good time is more important to them than gaining any kind of power. These 7s are easily bored, and they often start things that they don't finish. When 7s come from a place of stress, they can adopt the unhealthy behaviors of a 1. So they become pessimistic, somewhat judgmental, and argumentative. They start blaming others for their problems and can even lapse into black and white thinking. But when they come from a place of growth or security, they behave like healthy 5s. So here they stop consuming and start contributing. They're more comfortable with silence and solitude. They become quite a bit more serious. They think a lot more about the meaning and the purpose of life. The primary motivation of a 7 is freedom and happiness, and to avoid missing out on life and adventure.
Bless you.
Wow.
Bless you.
So after hearing those descriptions, would you say that something there clicked for you? Something made sense? Something didn't make sense? Something got confirmed? Something got unconfirmed?
No, for ones, it's bang on. Definitely one with a 2 wing. And I've moved much more to a 7 in healthy times. Entirely. Totally.
Yeah, that. Well, there you are. And yeah, and that's a positive. That's a positive, right? When you can actually see some of the measured growth, or people, even better, people can see it in you. Others.
I'm just curious if anyone has, so in the 8s, there's a specific line that says something about life is really hard for a woman who's an 8. Corporate America worships 8s, as long as you're a man, that is. So is there like more resources on how female 8s can get through life?
Good question. There probably are, and I will say a little bit about that in a little bit. But Val, were you hopping into the conversation here?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I haven't found anything specific for that. It's common though in all of the podcasts and all the books that I've read that being a female 8 is as they compare it. Being a female 8 is sort of like being like a black male 8, which are the two hardest pieces to be in the Enneagram right now. So that's not making it feel any better, Deb, but I do feel your pain. So from one female 8 to another, I'm with you.
Yeah, I think when I was in Atlanta in January, a bunch of us pastors were sitting around, and it's something that the women in our group were really talking about, how hard it is to be a leader. Never mind, like an 8 leader, in any kind of leadership situation. You know, when you're sitting around a boardroom table, in so many ways, you know, and I guess I didn't realize it because I can't. I don't come with the same context necessarily, but I am a 4, so I do feel you. I do. I get it as much as anyone could get it, maybe. However, I don't get it. So just that idea that that being an aggressive male entrepreneur as an 8 is seen as being very positive. However, you know, if you switch the gender there, often there's a different word that comes into play. Value reference before, and so I think that's something I think that would be hard to live with. One of the things that I'm going to do, however, is I've been collecting a bunch of resources that might help. and I'm going to put them in the Facebook group. But it's books and so it's authors, I should say, and musicians, actors who are a particular number. And so one thing that seems to help for me is reading books by fours. Tends to help me a fair bit. It kind of shows me the positive side of what a 4 leader could be. And so I do know of some books that are written by 8s who are women, and that might, while it might not answer some of your questions, it might point you in a particular direction. That's true for all of our numbers. Others? Did you find yourself clicking a bit with a particular wing when I read the descriptions?
I was thinking that like I'm a 1. I was thinking I was a 1 with a 2 wing, but I'm definitely not extroverted. When you talked about 2 being extroverted, so that started me thinking that, well, maybe I'm more on the 9 side because I'm definitely introverted. So yeah, still.
And Will, next week we're going to talk a little bit about subtypes. And so even within a 1 with a 1 with a 2 wing, there are 3 different subtypes there, and one of them is more introverted than the others. So that might even help to kind of talk about that. I'm a 4 with a 3 wing, but I'm also introverted. I'm not an extrovert, which kind of goes against the grain of the 4 with a 3 wing. Others?
I feel like I'm fairly new to this Enneagram stuff. I haven't really done much of it, but just in what I have already read, I feel like I'm a mix of 1, 4, 6, and 9.
Minestrone. Yeah. Okay. What might help is to look at some of those primary motivations or some of those connecting points or those characteristics that are typical of a 1, a 4, a 9, and there was one more you said in there. 6. Others?
You mentioned earlier that you took the test, or Corey, does anybody want to suggest a certain one that is like, you just go online, and is there a certain one that you think is better than others, or is it?
Yeah.
Good.
So there's a number of them. There's one that I think is fairly good, and it's the cheapest, and it's it can be found. I can put the link out there, but it's the Enneagram Institute. That's a pretty good one. I've done the whole pro version on EQ9, and that would be on Ian Morgan Cron's website. That I really appreciate that one. But I've also done the one on the Enneagram Institute site, and I found it very helpful, and certainly it was a heck of a lot cheaper.
Bernie, I did that one that Corey's talking about, and yeah, it was $12, and it's pretty good. I have a 33-page report, so
Okay.
well, that's enough for me. I don't need more than 33 pages of telling me who I am. But it was pretty. I felt it was pretty well done. I think it's gave me a lot of information.
Gord, eh?
I'm sorry.
It'd be cheaper just to ask Gord.
Sure.
Kath, what kind of length is that one that you're talking about? Like
it had 104
length in terms of how many questions, or how long did it take you to do it?
There was 144 questions, and it took me 40-ish minutes, 45 minutes.
Okay.
And you have to you have to do it all at one sitting because it doesn't save your answers.
Okay.
So I mean, I had started at one point and then I had to stop. Like I had done like 20 questions and I went, I needed to. So then I started again. But you have to do it in one sitting. But yeah, it was interesting. I found it interesting. And then you get your PDF file sent to you, or you can read it online. But yeah, it's kind of nice now to print it and then just highlight stuff. Yeah, and just to be able to refer back to it. One thing, Corey, maybe you can explain this to me. One thing that I found a little bit confusing was with my scores, like with your Enneagram type.
Yeah.
Almost all of my scores are like, they're so even. You know, like I have 16, 16, 15, 15, 14, 13, 12, like, which makes me feel like what Jan said. Like, it's like, am I like everything, you know, or is that just what everybody's scores are like? So I wasn't sure with that, but
you know,
anyway.
my top, I think when I did that one, I'd have to look back, but my top three were very similar in terms of the number, and then it changed after that. But I think it largely comes down to characteristics, right? Like it's going to give you some of those distinguishing characteristics of those three numbers. And then really it's up to you to determine the primary motivation that lies underneath.
I mean, I'm guessing that, yeah, there's questions from each category, so to speak, right? And then your top ones come out at the top, obviously. So I had a tie between two, but yeah, there's lots of really, for me, it was really good. It was worth it for me. $12, kind of nice to have it be written up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you take it when you've had more experience, you're more mature. I'm wondering if it wouldn't tend to be more, the numbers would tend to be more even than when you're younger and have, like when I took it when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I mean, I was so seven, you know, to curl your hair. And I take it now, and I'm much the same. I find the numbers are more even in the top three. So I'm wondering if that isn't a part of it.
The other thing that I wondered, now this is new to me, so I haven't had conversations with people who have also done it, but I kind of wondered, I mean, pick your number. If you're a, whatever your number is, I wondered if someone else's printout would be very similar in a way. You know what I mean? Like is there, if you're a 3, like it's like the book, this is your 3, or is this my 3? You know what I mean? I just wondered if this
more personalized
would be, say again?
Much more personalized, yeah.
I wondered about that. Like if one is, there was no one else that was a 3 here, right? So, or, you know, if someone else was a 3, would their number 3 descriptor be the same as mine?
Yeah, you know, and I think that there's something to what Val has just said in the chat about the healthier you are, the more even your numbers might be. And I think that there's some truth in there, you know, like sometimes our health or our unhealth or stress or strength really impacts what those how close those numbers might be, right? So because when we're answering a particular question, if it's coming from a place of stress, we can look like a very different number outwardly from the characteristics, and that might happen depending on how healthy we are or unhealthy in a whole bunch of areas. So I think you're right. It is quite a bit more contextual.
Yeah.
Others.
I'll just say that I'm an 8-7 wing, and also my tests, like, and I was not an 8 at the top of any of the tests that I took. I took 5 different of the free tests, but 8 was in only 4 out of 5, and only in the top of 3 out of 5, in the top 2. And so I found that fascinating because I'm definitely an 8. But I was apparently I'm a 6, a 1, a 7, or a 3, and according to as the top numbers of all my other stuff. So yeah,
well,
interesting.
And there are some characteristics that are similar across those numbers, right? And I know mine were different. When I did the Enneagram Institute test, I had 3 numbers. The highest one was a 7, then I was a 2, and then I was a 4. And there are some characteristics that are at play there, right? Between those 3 numbers. But when I did the other analysis, then came out as a 4. And we all know that that's what I am. So I think that while we can do the test, our numbers and our wings and our subtypes are reflected much more through some more careful analysis and conversation. Sometimes our spouses know our number more than we realize, or when we know our own.
One of the other things that I read or heard or whatever this last while I was reading about it and studying it is to try and think about when you're taking your test, to try and think about yourself as like your mid-20s, sort of that time where your life was all that really mattered in a way, like because we all, as we get older, most of us shift into being the people that we're working hard to become, and we try to build that. And so I'm curious if you would go back and do those tests and think about, the choices you would have made at 25 or 22 or whatever. And yay, Caitlin, you're still there. But that young, I think that's when we did the test with Aiden, I think that's one of the reasons why it was so clear when we got his results, and he felt too. He was like, oh, this is exactly who I am, because it's exactly who he is right now at 18. But yeah, it's just the idea of it being just that very base self of who we are, without all the stuff we work so hard to make public for other people. Because I know that's my thing. There are a lot of things I want to be.
Well, and I felt when I did the test, like the older you get, the more gray everything is, right? So it's choice this or choice this. Well, yeah, no and not, but there's no middle.
24-year-old self, Kath. Go with 24-year-old self.
I know, but I think that was it. Like some of the questions, I wouldn't say this one or this one, so you kind of go, okay, but it wasn't really the right answer because
it didn't work.
Somewhere in the gray area,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and back when you're 20, you know everything, right, Kate?
Right on. Enjoy.
Well, last.
I still think I know everything.
Well, you're in your 20s, aren't you?
25. Forever young. Any others? Questions still? Comments? Okay, so next time I want to explore the idea of subtypes, and I think that's going to rock your world. So we're gonna talk about subtypes, and we're also going to start exploring the Enneagram in relationship. So what does it mean, when a 1 is married to a 4, which they say is the worst possible combination, and me and Steph are a 1 and a 4. So are we doomed? What does it mean to to work with particular numbers? When those people are in your circle, how do you interact with them? That we're going to start kind of getting into that camp a bit. So that's what we're going to do next week. And the thing I just want to leave you with is something I was talking with someone this week about the Enneagram. And I think I just realized again that the gift of the Enneagram isn't about identifying or being necessarily boxed in by your number. I know sometimes we can resist being, called like, I'm an 8, I'm a 4, I'm a 6. Like we somewhat resist that. And that's not what the Enneagram is necessarily about. It's much more about being self-aware, starting to realize your own patterns, realizing who you are, and how you act out of that self-awareness. I think is the real gift of the Enneagram. So I really hope that as you continue to read and as you think and talk with people, that some of this becomes even clearer. And so do use the Facebook group. Throw in some resources that you find. I know I'll throw in a bunch yet tonight. Do have conversation. Do throw in a whole bunch of memes that you find that are really hilarious. Because that's one thing I really enjoy doing these days. Sending people memes and GIFs that have to do with the Enneagram. So I've collected over 100 that have to do with 5s. And they're all coming your way, Connie, FYI.
Corey,
Yeah, Kat.
I'm just wondering, when you talk about what did you say? Subtypes. What am I looking at in here? Like I see wings and I see, so how am I preparing myself for that?
You're not really preparing yourself for it.
Okay. I just wondered if there was a certain section that you were focusing on, or what am I doing to get my head around that?
Yeah. So I'll send it out by Vanessa. True. So I will send out some more information. I'll put it in an email, but also I'll put it in the Facebook page in regards to subtypes.
Sure.
Something that's not covered. It's referenced but not covered in these books. Although Ian has done a whole bunch of work on subtypes, and I think you'll find that super interesting when we talk about that. So Vanessa, it is coming your way in a nice PDF document. Good. Thanks for joining me tonight from the comfort of your own homes, and enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good, if you're not working tomorrow, because it's Remembrance Day, have a good day off, and we'll chat soon.
Great. Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Am I pressing here?